Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come
And
again.
a blessed good morning to one and all as we come together on this Friday morning. And yes, another week has gone by. They seem to be going by so quickly over these last few months. But we give God thanks for all that we are experiencing, all that we are hearing, all that we're learning from each other, especially for these moments as we spend time trying to be closer and closer to our divine selves, seeking to understand more and more of our world. As we go into this weekend and we recognize that we are coming closer and closer to our Republic Day, and with all the various conversations that are taking place, I want to invite us this morning as we bring this week to an end, knowing that next week will be a week with lots of activities and lots of energies swirling all around the place. I want us to center ourselves as we bring our entire nation of Barbados before God, as we ask God through His divine will, through her divine purpose, to open hearts to listen, open hearts to receive, to remove fear from us, because sometimes the fear of the unknown causes us to lash out and to seek to destroy the other. But we are supposed to be maturing. This step of republic status is supposed to be a step of maturity. And so we pray that those of us who are in this land may demonstrate some measure of maturity by recognizing that because someone else differs from us, it doesn't mean they're against us. Because someone does something differently, it doesn't mean they don't acknowledge what we hold as true and dear. Because one speaks a different language, it doesn't mean that the individual doesn't have the same values and love the same things. We've got to be more mature than this. So I'm asking that as we go into this time and in the weeks and months to come, pray for a spirit of openness. Pray especially for the Christian community. Because one of the challenges that we face is that more and more we will find ourselves that we are not the ones in charge, that we have to share with others, because others have as much right to be here and to speak and to express themselves as we have for over the last hundreds of years, 300-400 years. But it doesn't mean that we are less about serving God. It doesn't mean that our nation is less about serving God. But we just have to recognize that persons can serve the one and eternal all that is in ways that they choose. And we need to be able to appreciate that and be mature enough to understand that God's ways, not God way, but God's ways are not like man's ways. God's ways are inclusive. God has a place for all God's children, and we must remember this in everything that we do. God has a place for each one of us. So as we come this morning to our time of meditation and prayer, we bring this in our hearts. We bring this in our lives. We ask God to replace our fear with love. Love for the other, even if the other doesn't look like me, even if the other doesn't speak as I speak. Jesus constantly demonstrated this important fact. And time and again, he put in the face of his Jewish listeners stories that showed the Samaritan person as the hero, as the one who did the right thing. What an insult that might have appeared to have been. But it was not about being an insult. It was about being able to look beyond me and realize that God has a place for you as well. So we come in this final devotion of this week. We come with thankfulness, giving thanks to each and every one of us in this world. Each and every child of God. I want us to just think of an other that we may have difficulty welcoming, and bring that other into your heart today to be part of your meditation. Call that other by name, or by race, or by culture, or by ethnicity, or by religious persuasion. Bring before you what makes that other other. And hold that other in your heart, knowing that the only thing that can go into your heart of that other is who that other really and truly is. The spiritual essence. Not who you see them as, not what you hear them say, not what they look like, because none of that can get into your heart. But the only thing that can get into your heart is the spirit of that other. And see how you blend with that spirit. How you can be one with that spirit. How you're able to be in the same space. And you can experience the love. The love as you bring love into your heart for you both. Sharing that love. As you breathe in that love, see that love enrich, empower, energize both you and the other. And allow that other to just rest there with you. I know that this is how it's to be. As we go higher, so much falls off. All that divides us falls off. And all that we're left with is each other's essence, which is our truth. So let that be how we listen this morning to this devotion time. We listen with the other in our heart. We listen thinking of the other. While Jesus was going up to Jerusalem, he took the 12 disciples aside by themselves and said to them on the way, "See, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be handed over to the chief priests and scribes, and they will condemn him to death. Then they will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked and flogged and crucified. And on the third day he will be raised." Then the mother of the sons of Zebedee came to him with her sons, and kneeling before him, she asked a favor of him. And he said to her, "What do you want?" She said to him, "Declare that these 2 sons of mine will sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your kingdom." But Jesus answered, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink?" They said to him, "We are able." He said to them, "You will indeed drink my cup, but to sit at my right hand and at my left, this is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father." When the 10 heard it, they were angry with the 2 brothers. But Jesus called them to him and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. It will not be so among you, but whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." This is the word of the Lord.
The earth that once was crowned with
So we come to our Friday and we can look back and give God thanks for all that we have learned, experienced in these days, this week. Brings us to the end of another month, and we've got one more month to go in this year. On Sunday we will begin the new season of Advent. And one of the things I want to just remind you of, that Advent is not a penitential season. Somewhere along the line we kind of got it a little mixed up because of its earlier origins, but it has gone through many transitions. And Advent is more of a time of expectancy. And so some of the stringent things that we do for Lent, that we have practiced doing for Advent, really are not in keeping with what Advent is about. Like, for example, we don't say the Alleluias in our liturgy, and we don't say the Gloria in Excelsis Deo. But you would notice that most of the Advent hymns have Alleluias all through them. So it makes no real sense when we do that. So theoretically, Advent is not a penitential period, and we should still be able to say the Alleluias and sing the Alleluias and also sing the Glorias. And this is why too we are finding that more and more churches are changing their liturgical color to blue, right? So that it isn't confused with the purple of Advent. And in some places, the purple of Lent. And in some places they've even gone so far as to change the Lenten colors now to a kind of rustic, like crocus by color, kind of very heavy linen, to sort of speak more to the kind of rough time of Lent. So it is not pure and refined, but it is really a cleaning out and a cleansing. This is not Advent. Advent is a time of expectation, expectancy. So just bear that in mind as you go into this season of Advent. Bring our week to a close, a week that we have been focusing on the kingship of Christ, the cosmic Christ. And you will notice that over the last couple of days I deliberately didn't use the image of someone sitting on a throne, but we use more of a cosmic image of the Christ. And that is to help us to, in a sense, move away from a lot of the images that we carry, because many of these images offer us some ideas and some concepts that aren't in our best interests as we move forward in this world, as we try to have a deeper understanding of what's being said and what these stories mean. The images of Jesus as Christ as King comes out of a period that was more about that kind of kingship and lordship. And even now some folks are beginning to use terms like the reign of Christ as opposed to the kingship. And all this is occurring because we're just trying to become more in tune with the message of Jesus. And even this morning, now, here is Jesus being asked by the mother of James and John, which is a particular version. In another version in the scriptures, the disciples themselves ask, but in this version, the mother asks. And she wants her sons to sit one on the left and one on the right of Jesus in his kingdom. And Jesus says, you don't know what you're asking. It's almost like saying that, you've missed the point. And when the disciples heard that James and John made this request, or that this request was made for James and John, they were indignant, they were annoyed. But Jesus said, hey, hold on a minute, guys, this is a learning opportunity, right? And I want to talk to you about lordship. He said, you know how the Gentiles lord it over each other, that they're bent on having all these levels. And remember that as Jesus spoke with his disciples, they would understand what he's talking about, because they would be aware of the Roman occupation. They would be aware of the centurions and the generals and all the officers and all that, and the strict command, lines of command. So Jesus pulls the Gentiles out, and with that rigorous structure, right? And he says, this is not to be so with you, right? Because when you think about it, the general would not come anywhere near the soldier to serve the soldier. So Jesus deliberately uses this analogy that he has right there in front of him. And he said, no, in what we are creating, in what we are talking about, the one who is the greatest must be the servant. And the one who seeks to be servant can be considered the greatest. So Jesus is turning it inside out. And he's saying we need to get rid of all these images that we have inherited, and that we don't even realize when we have adopted images that are contrary to the message of the gospel. And such images, Satan on the left and the right in his kingdom, those images are contrary to the gospel. Because Jesus himself, who is supposed to be one sitting on this throne, says, I've come among you as one who serves. I have come among you as one who serves. We are in a real interesting time in our world. And I don't know if we are ready for it. I honestly don't know if we are ready for it. But all that we have heard in scriptures, all that Jesus has shared, the real deeper meaning, not the superficial meanings, but the deeper meaning, all that is coming out right now in this time. And it is turning upside down many of our structures. And those of us who have had power are feeling extremely threatened. For example, we're hearing a rhetoric now that this is a Christian country. And we say that because it was occupied for a short period by colonial masters. And they brought their faith tradition with them. And they insisted that everyone, when they actually considered that those slaves were actually human beings and could actually afford to have faith, and actually were more than just animals, and they allowed them to be a part of their teaching, at least limited as it was, but they allowed them. So we have come along from there, and we have become more than just animals, more than just slaves, enslaved persons, and we now are able to hold fast to this teaching that we were privileged to receive. But we forget there was a time when we were not considered to be worthy of this teaching. But now we have it. Now it's ours. And from that place of power inherited by those who gave us, from that place of power now, we consider that this is our place. And therefore anyone else who has any other avenue to respond to God's love, to respond to God's gift of life to them, any other person must be excluded. This is our place. No, it's not. This is God's land. And all of God's people are on this land. They will look differently. They will dress differently. They will believe differently. But they're all of God's children. And we have to use the story from this morning to help us remember this. It is not so with us who come to faith. We don't hold these positions of better than, more important than, I am right, my way is right, your way is wrong. No. Because time and again, Jesus took the outcast, the person, the supposedly least important person in his community, and lift that person up to be the most important. The Samaritans were constantly receiving these gifts from Jesus. Even the centurion was receiving this gift from Jesus. The Syrophoenician woman, constantly, Jesus was looking for those who would not be considered part of the kingdom and saying, I have not seen such faith in all of my community. Have we listened? Have we really listened to Jesus? If we have listened to Jesus, how can we purport to follow what we are seeking to do and the statements that are being made? What we have called Christianity is not what Jesus created or organized. That's been our doing, with all our prejudices, all of our power struggles, all of our personal interests and vendettas through the centuries. What you heard this morning, that's Jesus' message. The one who's greatest must be least of all. If we are Christians, we must serve the others, because that's what Jesus called us to do. We must serve the others. The week is ended, and we give God thanks for the Christ who came among us. I want to know him. I want to know this Christ. Not because of what someone has told me. I want to know this Christ within me. And most especially, I want to know this Christ as me in this world. May we be strengthened day by day in this knowing.